Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. This is Ali, glad to be a teaching assistant for today. So before we start up with the session, please give me a quick audio check. Is my voice loud and clear? You can confirm me with yes or no in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you, Abdul. Thank you so much for the confirmation. So we have trainer Ram today who will be taking the career assistant session today. So let me quickly check with Ram. Hi Ram, is my voice audible to you?
Yeah, Ali, yeah, it's audible.
Yeah. Thank you, Ram. Your voice is loud and clear. So I've given the co-host rights to you, Ram, and we can proceed with the session.
Sure,
Am
you
I
can
audible
say.
to you, Ram?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are audible.
Thank you.
We can start it.
Thank you. Yes, you can.
Okay. Hey, folks, great to be here and talking to you. Uh, uh, I was invited by Ali and the Simply Learn team to uh, take you guys through a session on product management career opportunities and what does it take to succeed in that role. So I'm here to speak to you a few things about it. I have a few slides at my disposal, but feel free to ping anything specific on the chat, and I'll be happy to take your questions and address them as we go. So I'll try to cover my slides in 40 to 45 minutes and leave like last 10 to 15 minutes for any specific Q&A that we can do in the end, or we can do take up your questions in the middle also. So I'll just present my screen. Great. Yeah. So let's get started. So before we dive into the details, I just want to give a quick intro of me so that you know who you're talking to. So I'm Ramnaran. I work as a director of product at Flipkart. Uh, I just to give you a snapshot of how my journey has been as a product manager, right? I graduated from my BTech in 2009, worked for a couple of years, worked for 4 years actually actually in a software development role. In 2013, went for my MBA from IIM Bangalore, graduated out of it, and then joined Flipkart as a PM, right? Since 2015, I've done various product management roles, from a platform product management role to a growth product management role. It's been a very, very interesting experience for me. And whatever I would be discussing and sharing today will be purely based on my learnings across the journey and what I have experienced. Today, I lead the entire seller side products at Flipkart. So I build products to make sellers' life easy, sellers who actually sell the products on Flipkart, since Flipkart is a marketplace. And how do I help them grow on the platform? How do they maximize their sales on the platform? That's what I do today. I have a team of multiple PMs and SPMs who work with me in delivering the products that we build. And yeah, I've been fortunate enough to actually work on a different set of product lines across my journey and derive a lot of learnings which I'll be sharing today, right? So today my slides will largely be covering around these 3 4 areas, right? One will talk a bit about how does the product management landscape look today, what are the kind of career opportunities, what are the kind of skills that you need to develop, what is the career trajectory that you guys go through when you jump into a PM role, what kind of an interview process that most of the companies or orgs kind of take you through, and we'll do one sample question also just to get you a feel of how the interview experience might look like. And I'll end it up with sharing some tips purely from a interview experience standpoint, and a few tips in general. How do you kind of go about your PM role, right? We'll go through some of these. Feel free to interject and put your questions in chat. I'll be happy to uh, stop in between and answer some of those which are relevant, or I'll keep it for the end, right? So feel free to do that. I was I was told that a large part of the people in this group are have some sort of experience. Most of you have 4 to 5 years of experience, and some of you have a little lesser experience. You would be, I'm assuming that you would be well tuned with how the technology industry works, right? So just to set some context, right? Over the years, the technology and IT spend of different companies has been on an increasing trend. If you look at the graph on the left, right? In 2017, which was roughly 5 to 6 years back, the average tech spend in the US the total tech spend in the US happened to be less than $1 trillion. And now 5 years later, we are looking at 2.5 to $3 trillion spend in digitization efforts, in digital transformation efforts, and all technology kind of services and products that happen across the industry, right? Even in India, you would have seen the development of different technology stacks, started from the India stack, which where for example the UPI stack was built. It is a highly adopted technology today. Then the government empowered different organizations to build the ONDC stack, which is again in an adoption cycle. Going forward, in the last year budget as well as this year budget, the government has put aside a huge amount of money to invest in technology services, right? Starting from across different sectors, from defense to AI to document digitization to actually even judiciary services, right? So a large set of funding is driven into digital transformation initiatives by both government and company. And when this happens, the entire tech ecosystem kind of develops, right? A lot of companies, be it banking, be it infrastructure, be it defense, they are also trying to get into the technology bandwagon to expand their services, deliver better value to customers, derive a lot of operational efficiency. And what this means for us is a huge up spike in terms of the kind of opportunities, job opportunities which exist in the ecosystem, right? You search in any kind of leads platform, job sites platform, you'd find thousands of product management jobs which are open today, and many get added on a daily basis as well. There are at least 70 to 80,000 product management jobs across different experience level which are open in India. Forget the rest of the countries and the rest of the world, but in India itself there are close to 1 lakh product management jobs which are open today, right? Starting from startups to large companies to services companies to product companies, right? And it's a well rewarding. I'm pretty sure you would know all of this, and the reason you guys also ventured into this thing is also it's very rewarding in nature, right? If you look at from a compensation perspective or kind of the growth trajectory it presents for you, there are a lot of opportunities. And even in my friend circle, in my alumni circle, I see a lot of people moving from strategy consulting, operations, marketing to actually product management, right? So today, earlier it used to be that only a specific set of profiles can take up the product management role. Now it has become more open. It is open to anyone, any person following any discipline to get into the product management role, as long as you develop certain skill sets, right? So the ecosystem is growing, a lot of opportunities opening up. So it is a very good time to get into this bandwagon and kind of participate in the evolution of product management as an ecosystem in India, right? Now, having said that, the kind of roles which are available for product managers, it's a very diverse set of roles across different companies and sectors, right? If you go to a hardware company which is manufacturing, let's say, devices, or even like, let's say, a company like Microsoft which is building Surface tablets, or a company like Xiaomi or OnePlus which is building devices, right? Even they have product management roles. The role of a product manager there is very different from a software product management role, which who are building software services or platforms or applications like YouTube, Uber, Flipkart, etc., right? So the role and the responsibilities of a PM is not very specific, is very contextual, differs a lot from different sectors to companies, and that is something you should be mindful of. And the kind of skills, the kind of domain understanding you need to develop is very different, and you need to understand these differences and kind of be prepared for that. Even in the same company, even in a software company, right, there are different kinds of product roles. There are growth product roles, there are platform product roles, and there are data product roles. Growth product roles are largely associated with funnel optimization, right? For example, I'm getting so many users. How do I convert them into customers? How do I make them transact on the platform? How do I get more revenue out of them? And that's what growth PMs do. Versus platform PMs are building technology stacks, right? Like, for example, Slack is a platform which has API integration, or provides a lot of ecosystem where third-party apps can plug into the Slack ecosystem and provide different services. right? And fulfill certain use cases, right? So platform PMs do a lot in building scalable platforms, and so that's easy for the ecosystem to operate together. A PM, for example, working in an Amazon AWS or a Microsoft Azure would be thinking about how do I make it easy for the developer ecosystem to participate and use these stacks. That's what a platform PM do. So the kind of metrics a platform PM or own are scalability, ease of onboarding new users to the platform, reliability so that the platform stays available for the longest amount of time. Then there are data PM roles where the role is primarily how do I leverage data? How do I build intelligent systems? For example, a Spotify recommendation or a YouTube recommendation. The intent of building those platforms would be how do I make myself more relevant? How do I use data to drive the best kind of recommendations to the users so that they engage with the platform more and they stay on the platform more, they spend more time using my products, right? So the kind of roles a PM kind of takes up varies across different companies and the different kind of product lines he works on, and the kind of skill set that you need to build is also slightly different. A growth PM would probably be a lot of stakeholders that you interact with is also very different, right? Growth PMs would be day in and day out working with designers, marketers to understand what kind of experience to build. Platform PMs would be engaging a lot more with software engineers, architects to understand how to build the technology stack. Whereas a data PM would be spending a lot of time with analysts, analytics, data scientists to build the right kind of models, experiment with them, and kind of iterate with them. So, although when you're starting off as a PM, there are a generic set of skill sets that you need to develop. But as you start specializing in any of the domains or any of specific product manager roles, you need to specialize and develop your expertise in some of these skill sets very, very dedicatedly, which kind of helps you excel on that role over time, right? Now, I see there's a ping on the chat. I'll just quickly check it. Sure, I'll address your question, slightly later. Yeah. So now coming to what are the kind of skills that a PM needs? I'm pretty sure you would have learned a lot of this during your course with Simplilearn and SP Jain Institute. But I'll just quickly talk you through some of the skill sets, right? So broadly, there are 4 sets of skills. The first is how do I do execution, right? How do I build the right kind of product? How do I build it in collaboration with engineering, analytics, designers, and deliver it? How do I make sure the product is going out with the least amount of bugs and it is successful, right? So that is the first part of skill set that you need to develop. And that is where you need to write a PRD. You need to develop how to write a PRD. How do I pull out data from SQL or Mixpanel? How do I look at the metrics? How do I understand the Scrum or the kind of Scrum management practices? How do I follow it with engineering team and make sure that the products are delivered within the committed timelines, right? All of that comes into the execution delivery part. The second core skill set of skills that you need to develop is the entire thing around product and design thinking. Basically, how do you build insights in terms of what are the kind of problems that the user is facing, what are the kind of problems that the company is facing today? How do I prioritize the problems? What are the right problems to go after? How do I size the problems? How big are these problems? Is it important enough to solve for? Is it going to generate revenue for my company? Is it going to be economically viable for me to solve that problem, right? So how do I talk to users and understand their needs and pain points? All of that comes under the part of actually doing product thinking and design thinking. And a large part of your responsibility, your core skill sets as a PM lies here. Because if you think of it, the execution and delivery, you have support. For example, from the project management team, the engineering team, execution and delivery. But a large part of product and design thinking has to be led by the product managers themselves, right? The third core skill set that you need to develop as a PM is the strategic thinking, which is basically thinking long term, moving away from immediate features to thinking how do I create value for my company in the longer term. How does my product strategy align with my business strategy in the future? What is the kind of revenue model I'm going to build, and how do I add to my company's growth? All of that comes under the strategic thinking part. And the fourth set of skill sets is the communication and leadership part, right? Basically, as PMs, whenever you're coming up with an idea or coming with you're suggesting that a problem needs to be solved, you need to influence and align a lot of your stakeholders and leadership behind that initiative, right? Because you need funding for building on that idea, for building that solution and solving that problem. You need people to work with it, you need capital to invest on it. So you also need to sell your idea, sell your problem statement, sell your story to your stakeholders, your leadership, get funding behind it and solve for it, right? So large part of product management role will, large part of your time as a product manager will go in aligning stakeholders, understanding their motivations, resolving conflicts. A lot of times your stakeholders would have a different perspective to the problem than you do. So how do I relate to them? How do I understand what their motivations are? How do I align them? How do I get funding behind my idea, right? So large part of your time will go in communicating and aligning leadership behind your initiatives. So product management in general revolves around these three things, right? Now, when you're starting off as a product manager and an entry level PM, as an APM or a PM1, a large part of your time will go into execution and delivery. But as you graduate as a PM, as you go up your career, you will see that you start spending more time at the leadership element or the strategic thinking element. So that's how your career kind of shapes over time. You spend lesser time in execution and you start spending more time in strategic thinking, communication, and leadership elements. That's how you grow as a PM. And that is exactly what I've tried to kind of capture here, right? So as a PM, if you think about your journey, when you're fresh out of a college, you are largely joining a company as an APM, associate product manager. A lot of companies in India as well as abroad offer the associate product manager role, right? As an APM, you tend to own a set of features. The decision making in terms of what to build, what product to build, what problem to go after is generally already done by a senior PM or your leadership. And it comes to you as key, let's build this feature. And as a APM, you take the responsibility of identifying the requirements, writing a PRD, uh, instrumenting the analytics part in Google Analytics or Mixpanel to be able to track those metrics, and then launching that product, right? As an APM, your responsibility largely lies in execution. So if you look at the last row here, right? In the 4 quadrants that we talked about, from execution to product thinking to strategic thinking to leadership, right? A large part of your time will go in execution oriented stuff. When you, after you spent a lot of time as an APM, as you graduate, you become a PM1 or a PM2 with 5 to 6 years of experience kind of thing, right? That's where you you start leading a set of products, right? You just don't lead features, but you start leading products and you lead a product line, right? And you start making decisions also as a PM. So it doesn't, the buck doesn't stop at just executing and delivering on a product, but you also start taking decisions. It's your responsibility as a PM to also identify which problems to solve, validating whether that problem is worth solving, validating whether that problem will generate revenue for your company, and then executing on it, right? As a PM1 or a PM2, you will start spending time in generating customer insights, business insights, as well as executing on the problem. At the same time, as a PM1, PM2, you also take up additional responsibilities beyond your immediate role in mentoring new APMs or mentoring junior PMs so that they also graduate into PM1, PM2 in the future. The next level in your career trajectory is an SPM or a GPM, senior product manager, some people, or a group product manager. A lot of companies call principal product manager instead of group product manager. The nomenclature keeps changing over companies, right? Now, how the role kind of evolves from a PM1, PM2 to an SPM, GPM is you start doing a lot of strategic thinking. Now, what do I mean by strategic thinking, right? Strategic thinking means that you are not only owning input metrics, but you're also owning outcomes. Every product that you're building is you are trying to build it so that you generate revenue for the company, you generate profits for the company. So as an SPM, GPM, your responsibility becomes that how do I own outcomes? You start taking up goals that next quarter, in the next 6 months, I want to contribute 50% additional revenue to my company. Whatever product I'm building, it should lead to 20% year-on-year growth for the company, right? And once that lens comes in, right, you have to build your product strategy. You have to identify your target user segment, which is closely tied up with your business strategy. So you are able to drive revenue and profit through that, through the products that you're building. At the same time, from a scope of work perspective, you start managing people, So you are just not immediately directly building products, but you're also managing a lot of people, and you're managing multiple product lines. You're also starting to get involved in the hiring or recruitment of PMs into your company, right? You take on more responsibilities as you go up the leadership trajectory in the company. And as you graduate from an SPM and GPM, you become a director or senior director kind of a in the company. And that's where you start doing a lot of leadership management, stakeholder management, conflict management as a PM as well, right? So you would interface with CXOs in the company, you'll interface with business strategy folks in the company, you will be fighting for resources. You'll not be given resources, you'll have to come up with initiatives, you have to fight for your resources, you fight for funding behind your idea. You also start participating in designing the org structure. How should I design my org structure? What kind of people do I put in? How do I make sure that my team as a whole is generating the maximum kind of output for the company, right? Your role becomes more of a leadership role rather than just an execution oriented role where you're building PRDs and delivering on that PRD, right? So as you grow up your PM career, the role evolves a lot. At a leadership, as a director, senior director level, it becomes more of a leadership role, and not so much of a PM role per se. Let me know if there are any questions. I'm assuming that it's people are still with me. Feel free to so raise of hands or pose questions if any. But I'm sure that people are following, right? Any questions at this point of time? Okay, I'll move on, right? So we talked about, right, what are the kind of opportunities which exist in the product management space? What are the skill sets you need to develop? How does your career kind of evolve over time? Um, I want to spend the next 3-4 slides in talking about the interview process which exists in general in most companies, right? So whatever I'm presenting today, it might not be exactly the same in every company, and that would understand as experienced folks already, right? But it will largely, the underlying flavors will still be the same. So in an interview process, generally PMs get evaluated for 3 things. The first thing is the core hard competencies of a PM, right? How good are you in problem solving? Problem solving means that if you're given a problem, how do you identify what is the root cause of it? You would be generally asked questions like some metric is falling. Let's say Uber is losing out on users, or the revenue of some company is falling. How do I figure out why it is happening? How do I fix it, etc. Right? So problem solving deals with identifying problems and doing an RC around it. There is product thinking, design thinking, which is more about taking decisions, right? Understanding who your users are, understanding what their problems are. Prioritizing, it becomes a large part of your design thinking process. How do I prioritize what problem to go after? Thinking what solution to build, anticipating the risks, right? If I'm building something, like what could be the risks or failure points that could happen in the future? All of that gets into product and design thinking. What should be the UX I need to build for the user, right? Typically in an interview scenario, you'd be asked questions like, tell me what is your favorite product. Let's say you say YouTube. Then if you are a PM for YouTube, what are the kind of features you would build? Why would you build it? What metrics would you track? If you build it, what could be the ecosystem impact, etc., etc. Those are the kind of questions which will get asked, right? Then the third part of PM competencies is basically your tech understanding, system understanding, right? Now, as a PM, you are not expected to learn how to code. You are not expected to understand system architecture, etc. If you know it, it's well and good. It is easier for you to communicate with engineers and work with them. But it's not necessary for you to know that, right? But what is expected out of it is you're familiar with the engineering terminology. You're familiar with how tech systems are designed, right? Now, what this means, what it means to be familiar is, let's say, as an example, right? If you go in as a PM and you give it a requirement, and a engineer comes and tells you that is going to take 5 weeks of effort to build it. If you don't have any clue of how engineering systems are built, then you'd say, ki, okay, I don't have a way to decide whether 5 weeks is more or less. Can it be done faster, right? Those kind of conversations actually become a problem because you don't know what is the optimal time of building something, or what are the trade-offs I can make. Is there a way to build it earlier? Having that system understanding will help you make some of these conversations more efficient, right? The other thing could be not building hacks, building for the long term. Am I building systems which are scalable in the future, which can actually plug in more use cases, more business models in the future and scale up well, rather than actually having to redesign the entire engineering stack every now and then, right? So a lot of times you need to be familiar, you need to be aware of what are the good design patterns which will make your conversation more easier with engineers and with other stakeholders, right? Same goes for design as well, by the way. You are not expected to know how to use a Figma or a Sketch or build designs, right? But if you know, you have a better way of thinking what design is good, what design is bad. You can give constructive feedback to designers in terms of how to improve the design. So that helps in your conversations and helps in delivering success for your product. But you're not expected to know how to do it yourself and do it yourself, right? The last part is business sense, because as a PM, you are just not responsible for execution and delivery, but you're also expected to drive business outcomes, company level outcomes, right? So you need to understand what is your company doing, what is your company's value proposition, how is your company trying to derive revenue, whatever I'm doing, how does it help the company? So that business sense also you need to develop, right? So the first part of your interview process, a large part of your interview process, 70 to 80% of your time that you spend in your interview process, the rounds that you go through, will focus on evaluating you for these core product management competencies and deciding whether you are doing well or not well, right? A lot of times it is easy to say whether you are doing good or not good in these elements. The second part of your interview evaluation process depends on your leadership skills, which is basically, um, do you show a lot of ownership, right? As a PM, the responsibility of executing and delivering lies with multiple stakeholders. But finally, the outcome is owned by you as a PM. If it's a failure, it's your responsibility, right? So you have to show a lot of ownership in deriving success out of the product. If things get blocked tomorrow, identifying these blockers and resolving them, it's a PM's responsibility, right? Communicating what your idea initiative to leadership and getting funding behind that, it's your responsibility. So a lot of leadership skills you need to display to keep moving forward as a PM. You will face a lot of blockers, a lot of challenges, a lot of conflicts, but you have to keep moving forward, keep pushing through these barriers, challenges, and keep moving forward. That's where a lot of leadership ability comes in. The third part is attitude, right? Again, this is a subtle element. It's difficult to also test in an interview scenario. But since it's a breadth first role, product management is a breadth first role. You are a jack of all trades, right? So you're expected to know a little bit of business. You're expected to know little bit of technology. You're expected to know a little bit of design. You're expected to know a lot of things, right? So when you're initially entering into the PM role, a lot of things might be new for you. For the first 3 months, 4 months, everything you would go to, every meeting you would go to, you'll feel that I don't have answers to this is new to me. So you have to go with an open mindset. You, instead of getting disturbed by not knowing that stuff, you have to say that see, there's a problem which has come to me, let me go back, let me learn about it, I'll come back with an answer, right? You have to stay curious, you have to have that hunger to learn, so that you keep developing your domain knowledge or context over time. The second part is resilience, right? As a PM, this is easier said than done. And ask any experienced PM in the role. There are a lot of challenges you face as a PM, lot of blockers, right? There are hundreds of things which will stop you from delivering a product, right? You have to push through these challenges. You have to make sure that you don't give up. You're continuously trying to identify solutions and move forward. So you have to show a lot of resilience to that. And third is high agency, right? You have to be a go-getter. You have to always be a go-getter, find out ways to move forward. Now, generally in an interview scenario, the interview process looks like this, right? It's a 5 to 6 step process. If it's a startup, probably you'll go through lesser rounds. If it's a mature company, you'll go through more rounds, right? If you're interviewing for an APM role or a junior PM role, you'll probably be tested for lesser of the skills. And if you're a senior guy, then there'll be more rounds which you go through, right? But largely, you start off with one exploration round. You will be given a case study or a sample question or an assignment that you go through. The intent of this round is to um, evaluate if it is worth spending time with you in the future rounds. If you are probably completely off, right? Your structured thinking doesn't exist. You are not good at problem solving. You'll be eliminated at this stage. But if you're largely there, you are able to do structured thinking, you are able to showcase how you are thinking, present your case, etc. Then you'll go through the next rounds, right? Then the next set of four rounds, right, focus on your PM competencies, problem solving to product thinking to business sense to tech sense, and you end up with a hiring manager round like in any other role. And large part of your hiring manager round will focus on evaluating for your leadership skills or your attitude. That's where a lot of these get tested. But as you graduate, if you're getting interviewed for a senior role, some part of leadership skills and attitude also gets tested inherently in the rounds from starting from round number 2 to round number 5. Here, what I mentioned, right? So that becomes an underlying theme across different rounds. I'll just check. There seems to be multiple pings in the chat. Yeah, so there's a question around to be a PM in a tech firm, how much technology you should know. Uh, so, so like I said, right, you don't need to know know how to code. Okay, it might be required for you to write a bit of SQL in the initial days to be able to pull out data, right, or to go to Mixpanel, go to Google Analytics and pull out data, right. But otherwise, beyond that, you're not expected to code. It will be helpful for you to be familiarized with the different kind of terminologies which exist in the ecosystem, right? Like what is backend, what is front end, what does UI mean, right? Or like what do I mean when there is a bug? What do I need to do? What is a domain? So a lot of technology terminologies you need to be aware of so that it makes it easier for you to converse with developers. But otherwise, you don't need to know a lot of technology, right? But like you would have seen now, a lot of technology evolution is happening. There is AR VR which is happening. There is generative technologies that were happening, chat GPT or whatever, right? So being well versed with a lot of these technology evolutions will help you identify opportunities to build better products and to also keep up with the pace of technology evolution. Otherwise, you might actually lose out on a lot of these opportunities in the future. But you don't need to go deeper and understand how to code or what kind of models to write in data science or etc. That you're not expected to know. Just being familiar with these technology trends and terminologies will be enough for you to kind of succeed in your PM career. I see another question around, I'm a Scrum Master and an Agile project manager. What is the position of Scrum Master in product management? So see, a large part of your Scrum management role revolves around how do I manage an Agile process? How do I make product execution and delivery more efficient, right? Like when there is a product owner, there is a written PRD, there is a clear understanding of what is the outcome or the acceptance criteria I'm trying to chase. A large part of Scrum Master will revolve around, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because you are the Scrum Master, so you would be an expert here. So a large part of your Scrum Master role would revolve around how do I make execution happen? How do I drive the right kind of estimates? How do I run my cadences in terms of stand-ups or backlog grooming, etc., so that we are well prepared for the sprint? During the sprint, how do I do stand-ups and reviews to make sure we are delivering on our commitment? So you large part of your role depends around product execution and delivery. But like I mentioned earlier, product management is more than that. Product management is also about design thinking, building product strategy, aligning leadership around your goals, communicating, storytelling so that you get funding and resourcing for what your idea is. A large part of your product management role focuses around all of these, and it's not just about execution and delivery. Yeah, I think there's another question around a case study. Can you just clarify, Maninder, if case study around what you're referring to? Is it for an interview question or something else? If it's about an interview question, I'm going to go through it in the next slide.
Yeah, it's regarding the interview question only.
Sure. So I'll just go through one example here, and I would encourage all of you to share your opinion, thoughts on how do you go about this. So this is a practice question, right? Let's say you are a PM for a certain app. You can take any app. Let's say Uber, for example, right? And you noticed, or your leadership came up with a insight or a finding that recently the uninstallation rate of your platform has gone up, right? A lot of users are uninstalling your app. What would you do, right? If this question came to you, and don't think of it as an interview, think of it like you're actually a PM for that product, right? If I came to you and told you that this is a problem, right? People are uninstalling your app. So what would you do? Please post your, and don't worry about whether my answer is right, wrong, opinion is right, etc. Don't worry about that. Just write down your plain open thoughts in the chat. It's perfectly fine. You don't have to structure your thoughts also if you want.
Reason is to like find out what are the reasons, or maybe we can review what has happened. What are the reasons why people are reviewing, and maybe we can conduct a survey or maybe the previous, like what all customers have used and given their feedback. So just a instant thought which came in my mind.
Awesome. Good answers. Any other thoughts? Ravis, I think you wrote about break down the question first. So I would like to understand what do you mean by breakdown. Feel free to come on camera, unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, breakdown in the sense, this is a very basically we are talking about uninstalling the app. So first we would like to understand in which region this downfall has happened, right? Or basically first we need to break down this question into micro questions where just to make sure any assumptions that we are making are the correct assumptions before making any solution. So that we can go first we break down into a top down approach and then we get the solution at the bottom up approach.
Yeah, very fair, very interesting points. Thanks for sharing your thoughts openly. So I think a lot of you, like you rightly pointed out, right? The first part of it is, I'll just break down whatever you guys have mentioned into two things, right? The first part is clarifying the problem statement itself, right? Like for example, when I say users have been uninstalling, what does it mean? What metric am I looking at? It might be valid for you to ask the interviewer about it, right? So is it like uninstallation rate? How do you measure it? Like number of uninstalls divided by number of current users of your platform, or it's just the absolute number of uninstalls? What is it? It's not very clear from this question itself, right? And when someone is saying recently, what does it mean? Is it like last 2 weeks, last 6 months, last 1 year? Again, it's not very clear. Has it been a sudden decline, sudden rise in uninstalls, or has it been a gradual thing? A lot of things are not clear from this question. It's a slightly ambiguous question, although it might not look to be that the case, right? But in a real life scenario, a lot of these questions become very, very important. So it might be important for you to first clarify. For example, let's say 1 year back, just hypothetical numbers, right? 1 year back, your user base was 10 million and 1 million users were uninstalling on a daily basis. So it would be roughly 10%, right? It would not be the case. Obviously, it will never be the case that 10% of your users are uninstalling every day. But let's assume this is the case for simplicity, right? And today, let's say you have 20 million users on your platform and 2 million users are uninstalling. Percentage is still 10%. So it is not like it has increased or decreased over time, right? So it might not be even a problem. Second, even if let's say you get all your metrics, etc., clarified, why is it important for you, right? Is it really a problem? Just to give you an example, let's say the users who are uninstalling your app, where users who are not even using the app, they've kept the app installed on the phone, but they were never visiting the app. They were not taking any rides. In the case of Uber, they're not even coming and browsing for or looking for rides. Them uninstalling, is it really a problem? Is it going to hamper your product's revenue or growth in any way, right? So a lot of those questions will really depend on you understanding this problem, identifying which metrics are you tracking, and asking yourself, is it really important, right? The second part is where a large part of your answers kind of came in from in the Ravi sector, right? What is the source of the problem? Let me understand, right? Whoever is installing, is it new users who are installing, who installed like yesterday? Or is it existing users who have taken 5 rides, 10 rides and uninstalling, right? Are these Android users or iPhone users? A lot of these questions, which geography do they belong to? Is it somewhere from East India or some particular metro cities? Whatever it is, right? So a lot of these questions is more about segmenting the data into different cuts and dimensions and figure out where the problem lies, right? Which is what a lot of you have hinted around. The other part, just to give you a sense also on the first problem statement, like clarify the problem statement, right? I think the moment I presented the question, a lot of you also made an assumption that when I mean users here, I mean the users who are requesting rides. But if you think about the Uber ecosystem, there are 3 stakeholders in the ecosystem. There is an end user who is taking rides. There is the company itself, which is a stakeholder, which is trying to make revenue out of it, etc. And there's a third set of users, which are the drivers who are providing rides on the platform. Even drivers are some sort of users for Uber. And there are 2 platforms. One is the consumer side platform, rider platform, and there's the driver platform, right? No, we made an inherent assumption that it is a demand side ecosystem. We are talking about the consumer side platform, right? That also something you should clarify as a problem statement from the interviewer, right? Am I clear till now? Do you think any counter viewpoints, any kind of thoughts that you guys want to share?
Yes, sir, all good.
Sure. So I think second part of the problem, large part of you kind of expressed it very clearly. The third part is actually building hypothesis. Once you've discovered what is the metric, what is the source of the problem, then you start building hypotheses around why it happened. Are there ecosystem level factors, macro level factors, which is not just impacting your company, but also other companies, right? There could be reasons, for example, there's a negative PR which happened, which is impacting your company.
So one question I have. So when we break down our problem statement when we break down our problem statement, right, into multiple problem statements, then for each problem, I would be looking out for some. We'll be looking for some data points, right? Who owns that data point, or I should be basically available or basically responsible to get those data, or I will work out with the multiple teams to get that data.
Yeah, so I'll answer it in two parts. So in a real life scenario, it's a collaborative responsibility, because what is the problem is happening is not just impacting you, it's impacting the company as well, right? So a large part of the job reflects around, like, you identify these questions, these analytics requirements, you give it out to analytics, and they will come back with answers. They will give you a timeline. I'll come back in 2 days or whatever. They'll come back with data points, and then you look at the data, identified newer problems or newer deep dives you need to do, and go kind of in that track, right? In an interview scenario, you can always make assumptions. You can say that, let me make this assumption, and you can validate with the interviewer itself that is this a fair assumption, or do you want me to do you have any numbers that you can share it with me? You can always make this assumption or ask interviewer for a data point, right? And I'll just take an adjacent question, which might not, I'm not sure if you actually alluded towards that, was a lot of times a problem will break down into 5 sub problems. Now, should I spend time in an interview scenario? Should I go into all of those 5 sub problems, or do I focus on one? Again, in many of these scenarios, it will be good for you to clarify with the interviewer. Tell him that these are the 5 sub problems. Do you want me to focus on something, or do you want me to take up something based on my analysis, right? Then if the interviewer suggests something, go down that route. Otherwise, what you can do is make some prioritization call. This problem seems more relevant or more likely based on this data point, so let me go down that path for now. You can always take this distance in an interview scenario.
Okay, so it's always good to break down a problem statement into 5 micro problems, right? Maximum 5, basically, right?
Thinking in a structured way and breaking down, going top down, breaking down your problems and further breaking down into sub problems is always encouraged in an interview process. The more mature company, the more established tech company that you interview with, structured thinking is going to be a large part of your interview evaluation process. If you move away from that, right? Like, for example, a lot of some people I saw in the chat started suggesting solutions. For example, I'll start giving some discounts or whatever, right? I'm not sure it was a solution proposal. If it is a solution proposal, it's a straight no. You cannot jump into a solution assuming a problem. You have to first understand your problem space better. Yeah, Nabil, please go ahead.
I just want to know, like, it is already clear about whatever you have mentioned, but what are the tools or techniques that we can make use of understanding this source of problem? Is it only through the data analysis, or is there any other techniques that we can employ?
No, I think it will largely depend on 3 things, right? Any kind of data metrics that you look at, any kind of trends which are visible from that, or your understanding of the domain ecosystem, what could have gone wrong, or by talking to users, qualitative research that you can do with users. It is never anything out of this, right? How do you have to start somewhere, right? So that starting somewhere has to be based on your domain understanding, or what users are telling you, or what is visible through data.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So I think the last part is very clear, right? Once you've identified the problem, you know where the problem is arising from, you have some hypothesis, you looked at data to validate the hypothesis, then you go into solution discussions, right? What is the feature that I can build to fix this solution? How do I test out the feature? If it was a product thinking question, the interview process will probably start from here, right? What solution should I pick? What solutions should I prioritize? How do I design the experience around it? If I build this feature, what could be the risk, or what could be the alternate problem I create for the company, etc. Which all of this, which you'll have to go into, right? I'll just move forward, right? So this was a simple question. Now some takeaways for you to kind of keep in mind while you go through an interview process. the first thing, like I mentioned, kind of never be solution oriented, right? Don't jump into ideas, solutions as you get to a question, right? First thing is dissect your problem statement itself. Try to analyze each word of your problem statement question and try to understand what is there a very quantifiable specific thing there, right? Second, do problem discovery. Trust me, 70 to 80% of your product management role as an entry level PM is about problem discovery. It's not about solution discovery, it's about problem discovery. Ask yourself questions as much as possible. Validate your questions with users, with data, to understand if I'm going after the right problem. If your problem itself is wrong, identification itself is wrong, then whatever solution you develop for that problem is destined to fail, right? So large part of your interview experience will also depend upon articulating the problem well first. Second is making assumptions. For example, like I mentioned in the question, you made an inherent assumption that it is a consumer side problem, right? A lot of times we don't even realize that we made this assumption, right? As you practice more questions, I'll give you another example. If I have to ask you tomorrow, for example, how would you design a bookshelf? What would be your question answer? Can you just like jot down 2-3 thoughts that come to your mind? If I were to ask you a question, how would you design a bookshelf? Are you guys like afraid of writing down any answers, like, or just thinking to yourself, what am I assuming here? Okay, I'll probably, because I'm not listening from anyone, I'll just go ahead. See, a lot of you might have started thinking about, you've started visualizing in your mind, how does a bookshelf look? It looks like a wardrobe or.
So may I say something? So maybe I can think like depending on what is the space, how it should be of which material, wooden or iron,
Yeah,
or how many shelves I want, and for maybe smaller size of books, and depending on like different criterias. So,
yeah, yeah, very fair, right? So I'll just give you one assumption again we made here, right? It is also a part of how an interviewer frames a question. A lot of times the way the interviewer frames a question, it becomes apparent that it is a one way of thinking. For example, we inherently thought about a physical bookshelf, right? In today's world, a bookshelf could also mean a digital bookshelf. The objective of a bookshelf is to organize your books and to help you find any book that you need easily. That's the objective of bookshelf. Now, if you're someone who reads books online or digitally, then a digital bookshelf also becomes relevant. Again, I'm not being nitpicky here. I'm just giving an example so that you understand our own biases, which creep in very, very easily, right? So a lot of times when you're interviewing with large tech companies, it becomes important for you to practice well enough so that you identify the inherent biases that you make in your decision making today and question them. Okay, it is not going to be easy, I can tell you for sure, because we are used to a certain way of thinking, and more so in an interview scenario, you are stressed out, you are feeling the heat of the moment, and it might not be easy. It's not like if you make this mistake also, you'll get rejected in the interview. That's not the case. But even in a real life scenario, like and in an interview scenario, it will always be beneficial for you to question your biases and assumptions, right? The third part is taking, how do you take decisions, right? A lot many times when I let's say ask in an interview scenario, a guy kind of identifies 3 problems, and I ask him, for example, him or her, like, what problem would you pick to solve? He or she would say, ki, I'll pick the second problem, third problem. And then I ask him, ki, why did you pick this? Why did you pick the second problem? Then probably he will not have an answer. He'll try to manufacture an answer. This looks important to me, or this is the reason, etc. Right? A lot of times, don't go with such answers. Right? Try to take a very conscious decision. Even if it's not the best decision that you're making. A lot of times in a product management interview, the importance is not about the solution or the answer being right or wrong. It's about how do you structure your thinking, right? So establish a framework. For example, while prioritizing problems, you can create a framework that this problem has to be big enough. The market size for this has to be high. This has to be economically viable for the company. There should be technology available to build it. If I build this, then I'm able to, like, there are no other risks or complications that I create for my users, or my experience doesn't go for a toss. That problem is aligned with my business strategy or product strategy, right? So you create a framework these are the 3-4 criteria which I'll use to evaluate these problems, and this is how it will put. Now, that criteria itself might be wrong. The way you give scores to the different problem statements for each of those criteria might be wrong, and that's perfectly fine. But you did the good job of actually establishing a criteria and structurally making a decision, right? And that will give you a lot of brownie points in your interview process. I'll just pause here. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take those up.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, Abdul.
Yeah, hi Ram. I joined this SPJ and simply learn for the product management because need to get quick start in the PM level. And what is the basic role? Because I'm very fresher to the PM role, and I'm having the experience in the operations and all in Flipkart and PhonePe. And I know the basic level of how the product builds and how the execution and how it goes lives and all. So, what is in your thought? So, how can we start our career in PM role?
Yeah, sure. I made an assumption that by now a lot of you, given that you've decided to kind of move into the product management role, you'll know a bit about what the PM role entails. We'll just quickly go through it. I don't think we have more time. We have 10 more minutes. So I have one more slide to cover, but before I get to that, I will answer your question. So see, the role of a PM is to solve user problems and at the same time drive value, whether in terms of revenue or profit for the company. That's the one-liner summary. Okay. Now I'm pretty sure you would have seen some variation of this statement in the internet, in your books, etc. Right? But what does it mean actually, right? I think a few things, right? One, understanding what is your business strategy, understanding your company's users, who are my users, who are my stakeholders, what problems are they facing, what are their needs. That is the first thing, right? How do I understand my business strategy, company landscape, my users, identify what problems they're facing, what needs they have. Second is prioritizing what problem to go after. Is that what problem is worth solving for, what problem is monetizable, what problem is economically viable, what problem is is solvable from an engineering or tech standpoint. Doing all of that, right? Third is identifying kind of solutions or features or products which you need to attack that problem. And fourth is delivering on that product, tracking metrics, making sure people are using it, people are adopting that product, and people are paying them, like you are generating revenue out of it, right? So a PM role takes a lot of this, right? Now, when you're in your entry level, when you're starting off with your PM career, you're joining as an APM or a PM1, it will be more about the last part where someone else has made a decision for you. Someone in your senior PM hierarchy or your leadership has made a decision that this is the problem I'm going after. This is the product you need to build. They come to you and say that let's build this feature, and you would have to do the part of writing a PRD around it, articulating what metrics you'll track, what features to build, and then working with engineering, design, analytics, etc. to execute and deliver on it. But as you further grow up your career, as a PM, you also need to identify what problems to solve, what problems exist and what problems to solve. And further, as you grow in your career, you'd also have to align your leadership around these problems or your ideas, your initiatives, your problem statements, so that leadership is funding your idea. They are putting people behind you. They are investing capital behind you so that you're able to recruit people to work on your problem statement, right? So as your PM role evolves, your responsibility also evolves. The kind of things that you do on a day-to-day basis also changes to a great deal. But in an entry level, it's more about building a feature, building a product, writing PRDs, working with engineering to execute on it, launching it, doing marketing around it, making sure your metrics are improving, etc., etc. Does that answer your question, Abdul, or do you want me to answer something specific around it?
No, not specific around it. But the thing was, when we are applying in the IIM job portals also, we are not getting any relevant vacancy where we are looking for. Means they are asking from the one minimum of 1 year to 5 years and above 5 years. So how can we get into that? Because we
think-
are we
Sorry to
because the experience of old and this one doesn't match, right?
Yeah, I think that's a separate question. So basically, your question is around how do I make a transition into a product management role? How do I create my resume, or do I attract recruiters and companies to shortlist me, etc., which is a slightly different topic. I'll be happy to talk about in a different session if Simplilearn gives me the opportunity, but I don't think we have time today to cover it. We can engage offline, or if there is a follow-up webinar to discuss about that.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up my presentation with one more slide, right? So I think this is not to discourage you, but in my experience of 15 plus years in the technology industry, right? What I can tell you is the product manager role is a very, very demanding role. You'd you'd face a lot of setbacks, a lot of blockers. It's not just product setbacks. A lot of times the features that you build or products that you feel will fail, will not move the metrics. You would have thought of something, but that did not happen. You would have expected users to use your product in a certain way, they use it in a different way. You would face a lot of setbacks from your stakeholders, internal stakeholders. You think you have a very, very good idea, you go to your stakeholders, tell them that, and they say that no, I am not aligned with that idea, I don't think it's a good idea. Or they might actually be inherently aligned with the idea, but they are afraid of it. For example, with ChatGPT and everything coming in, generative AI coming in, right? You might actually build something which might eradicate certain jobs, right? And so the operations team might be apprehensive of that key. Let's not build it because my job will go off. I'll have to figure out what do I do next, etc. Right? So you'll face a lot of setbacks as a PM, and it's easy for you to develop that imposter syndrome, to question yourself, to have doubts, right? Am I really going to be successful as a PM? Am I the only one in this journey? You'll feel that I'm the only one who is not doing well. Everyone else around me is doing well, right? But I think these are very, very natural. Even I go through it after having done product management for close to 10 years now. I still face it, right? So it's natural, and don't be afraid of it. But at the same time, you have to be resilient. You have to keep pushing yourself, not give up, and keep learning and keep pushing yourself, right? Now, why does this happen? Just it's important for you to understand so that you can figure out things that you need to do to address this, right? First is it's a very jack of all trades kind of a role, right? You need to know a bit of everything. And as you're starting off, you'll not know a bit of everything, right? So in the beginning of your role, or whenever you're changing product lines or changing companies tomorrow, a large part of your initial days will go in talking to different stakeholders and getting that uh, context, getting the business domain, so that you have the right kind of knowledge to succeed in your career. Yeah, Ali, you have something to say? I'll just wrap up in 2 minutes. Sure. So the second part of this role is influencing without authority. Since you're a PM, until you go to a senior PM where you have team reporting to you, in your initial days, you don't have anyone who is reporting to you. Neither engineers, nor designers, nor analytics, nor central strategy. No one reports to you. So you can't exercise control or direct them to do something purely by authority. I'm telling you to do this, so do this. That will not happen. You have to convince them. You have to convince them by showing data. You have to, a lot of times as PMs, what I do, for example, if I'm doing user research, right? When I talk to users, I record my sessions either in video or audio, and either I invite my engineers to participate in that user research exercise. They are with me while meeting users, or I show them the recordings later so that they feel it firsthand. They understand the problem firsthand, right? So it becomes easier for me to influence them, make them understand what the problem is, right? So a lot of times engineers might feel that whatever things you are giving me, it is not critical enough, it is not challenging enough for me to build. But at the same time, it might drive a lot of impact for your company, for your revenue, for your company, right? So how do you influence without authority is something that you'll find a lot of challenging. It's very challenging for you to do, right? The third part is thinking long term. A lot of times you are taking bets. You don't know if it will succeed or not, and you have to be ready for seeing those failures, right? Second is, no decision will be a very, very clear yes. There will be a lot of trade-offs you're making. 5 things will probably be very, very apparent that it is going to be work in your favor. There will be 2 other things which might be looking like it will not work in your favor. So you have to take a lot of trade-off decisions, right? There will be choices to make. There will be 5 choices. How do I pick which choice to kind of go after? And you have to do a lot of risk management, anticipating what risks or what failure points could happen and kind of solve for that. So a lot of these things kind of make it difficult as a PM, your role as a PM. So don't be afraid of it. Jump into the role and kind of be curious, be open, be patient with yourself, but be resilient to keep pushing forward in spite of these setbacks and kind of be successful on the role, right? With that, I will end my discussion. I can take another 2-3 minutes for questions, if any, and here are my coordinates if you want to reach out and do any further discussions. Thank you. Was there any question in the chat section which was left unaddressed? I can probably answer that. Or over to you, Ali.